It's just a dream, thank God. Wait a minute.
Hey everyone, I'm DanDan, and I'm afraid. I'm scared. I'm exhausted, but I can't sleep. I won't sleep. I refuse to sleep. Because when I sleep, I dream about Dark Souls 2 and Wii Sports Club. It doesn't have the curve. I also keep dreaming about this weirdo named Freddy. He haunts my dreams and it makes me play these terrible, terrible games. And one time, he even made me watch this Rise of Skywalker. But I have a theory that he's some sort of dream demon messing with my head, making me afraid. He can only attack me in my sleep, but when he attacks me in my sleep, I get hurt in real life too. That's why I've been constantly taking the evil up drink that keeps you awake and it's evil and up and shit. But it can only last for so long. I need to find a way to defeat him. Wait, isn't there a movie franchise about this?
A Nightmare on Elm Street, a horror slasher series with 9 films from 1984 to 2010. The original film, just simply titled A Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984, written and directed by Wes Craven, really blew up. By this time, you already had series like Halloween and Friday the 13th, but Wes Craven wanted to do something different, something new. He wanted a villain that could talk and taunt his victims. Inspired by newspaper articles in the 1970s about Khmer refugees being tormented by terrible nightmares and refusing to sleep. There were even some who passed away in their sleep shortly after. The 70s pop song Dreamweaver by Gary Wright basically sealed the inspiration for Craven completely alongside some Eastern religious culture. The first film had a budget of around $1.8 million and was produced by New Line Cinema. The film went on to gross $25.5 million worldwide and basically put New Line Cinema on the map. They even began to call New Line Cinema the house that Freddy built after the success of the series.
I'm also going to be ranking these films on a tier list, so I can call the bad ones terrible and the good ones mediocre. Yeah. That'll show him. So now before he comes after me again, let's look at the first film so we can see how I can defeat this dream demon.
A Nightmare on Elm Street. The film opens up with a man in a red striped sweater putting together some kind of knife glove. Cue the title card. A woman in a white dress running through a wet dark hallway and introducing Johnny Depp. Oh wow, this actually was his film debut. Imagine that, Mr. Jack Sparrow himself starting his career in a slasher film from the 80s. Weird. Anyways, the woman continues running around this building, seemingly some kind of boiler, and gets chased by someone. She gets caught and wakes up. Later that day, the girl, Tina Gray, is at school and she's telling her friend group about the dream she had last night. The other woman in her group, Nancy Thompson, and her boyfriend Johnny Depp, or Glenn, tells her not to worry about it. Later that night, Nancy and Tina talk about the dream once more, and Nancy says she remembers she had a similar dream about a man with a knife glove. Tina's, I assume, boyfriend Rod shows up, and they go back inside, while Tina and Rod engage in activities. Nakedly. Later, Tina awakes in the middle of the night, hearing something hitting the window with something cracking it. Here we see the iconic and classic scene of the slanted ceiling above Nancy sleeping form to a person stretching like a balloon. And Tina walks outside and gets confronted by our villain, Freddy Krueger, with, whoa. Dude, you might want to get those checked out. The face, too. It looks like he f***ed someone with every STD with the side of a scat fetish. Tina struggles with him while he does some spooky to scare her, and it turns out this is just a nightmare she's having, and wakes up Rod, who just witnessed her get slashed and begin to float around the room, leaving blood everywhere. Nancy wakes up hearing Tina and Rod screaming as Tina falls to the ground dead. Nancy and Glenn break in and find the room and Tina covered in blood, and then see that Rod escaped through the window. We meet the sheriff, Donald Thompson, who looks creepily like Sean Connery, and he's also Nancy's father, and he shows up to the station where Nancy and his ex-wife are at. They talk about what happened, with Nancy trying to convince him that Rod didn't kill Tina. The next day on her way to school, Nancy gets confronted by Rod, who tells her that he's innocent, and Sheriff Thompson shows up having followed her and arrests Rod. Later, Nancy falls asleep in class and sees Tina in a body bag in the hallway and decides to follow her? You know, me personally, if I saw someone dragging my dead best friend's corpse in a body bag around the corner, it'd probably go a little something like this.
Call it in. It's time. It was a good life.
Nancy walks into a boiler room and sees Freddy, who corners her. She realizes it's only a dream and burns herself on a pipe and wakes up screaming in class. She leaves and visits Rod in jail, and he tells her about what happened with Tina. He tells her that he also saw Freddy in a dream a few nights ago and realizes that Rod is definitely innocent. Later that night in the bath, she begins singing a song to herself. And she begins to fall asleep in the bath, giving us the iconic shot of Freddy's hand coming up between her legs. She falls underneath the water in a big space and begins drowning. She pulls herself back up, and afterwards she takes some stay-awake pills, and you can see her hair beginning to turn gray here from the stress and fear. Captain Sparrow shows up at her window, and Nancy asks him to guard her if anything happens when she's asleep. In her dream, Nancy wanders around her town and sees Rod getting approached by Freddy in his jail cell. She of course gets attacked by Freddy, and she runs back in her house and into her room, where she almost gets killed by him until her alarm clock wakes her up. Nancy gets mad at Glenn for falling asleep since he asked him to wake her up if she starts having a nightmare. Her and Glenn run to the police station and begs the cops to let her see Rod as Freddy begins to kill Rod in his cell. Her father refuses to let her see Rod, but she convinces him. Before they get to the cell, Rod is hung in his cell by Freddy, making it look like a suicide to make it seem like Rod was guilty. At the funeral, Sheriff Thompson asks Nancy who she thinks killed Tina and Rod, and Nancy tells him what she knows. Her mother takes her to an institution where she asks the doctor why she can't just get a pill to prevent her from dreaming. Tells her that if you don't dream, you go insane. During the study while she's asleep, Nancy is once more attacked by Freddy and her hair turns even more gray, and they notice the slashes on her arm. Nancy then realizes she pulled Freddy's hat out from her dream into reality. The next day, Nancy continues trying to convince her mother that there's someone in her dreams trying to kill her, and written on the inside of the hat is Fred Krueger's name. Nancy confronts her mother for hiding something from her and tells her to stop drinking, and her mother tells her that Fred Krueger is dead and can't come after her. Later on, Glenn tells Nancy about the Balinese way of dreaming, that if you just turn your back on a dream monster, it takes away its energy and power. Maybe I should try that.
Nope, still real. And still 40 hours long.
Nancy goes home and her mother finally explains to her about Fred Krueger. She tells them that Krueger killed at least 20 kids in the neighborhood, and it drove them all crazy when they couldn't figure out who it was, and when they finally caught him, he was released on a technicality because someone didn't sign a search warrant in the right place, and after he was freed, her and a bunch of other parents tracked him down and burnt him alive in the old abandoned boiler room where he took the kids. Afterwards, Nancy calls Glenn and she tries to get him to come over so they could try to get Freddy together. She tells him not to fall asleep, so naturally the first thing he does is, well, not fall asleep. Glenn's dad, who for some reason looks like Peter Griffin, decides to be a piece of shit and calls Nancy a lunatic and doesn't want her hanging around Glenn anymore, as if they aren't, like, together. When Nancy tries to call them again, Glenn's parents pick it up and his fucking waste of oxygen of a father tells her to call again tomorrow and leaves the phone off the hook so she can't call anymore. Nancy hears Freddy on the other side of the phone when she attempts to call again and disconnects the phone out of the wall. And when she tries to leave, she hears the phone ringing again. That's scary! Freddy on the other line tells her that he's her boyfriend now, and she rushes downstairs to try to save Glenn, but her mother, drunk on the couch, tells her that she locked the door and doesn't have the key on her. While this is happening, Glenn of course is taken by Freddy and gets turned into a fucking human geyser in his bed, and his mother watches this happen. Nancy sees her father show up to the scene and calls the house to ask him about Glenn. He confirms to her that he's dead, and Nancy tells him that she's gonna get the guy who did it. She tells him to break the door down in exactly 20 minutes, and he says that he'll be there to catch him, although he doesn't really mean it, and he hangs up. Nancy begins home alone in her house with booby traps, and she I said booby. And then she says goodnight to her mother. Nancy goes to bed and tracks down Freddy, who chases her around her dream. Freddy iconically calls her a bitch, and she tackles him and wakes up, unable to have brought him into real life. For a moment, she believes that maybe she actually is crazy. Until Freddy jumps out at her and she traps him and runs to the window to begin screaming for help. One of the officers just tells her that everything's gonna be okay and to calm down as Freddy runs into each of her booby traps. Booby trap.
Daddy, help me! Please! Maybe I better go tell the lieutenant.
Oh, really? You dumbass pig. You should go tell the lieutenant, huh? The sheriff's daughter is screaming for help and saying that someone is in her house trying to kill her right across the street where another kid was just murdered. And all you got is, maybe I should tell the sheriff. The cops in this town are so smart. Say, how was preschool today, bub? Learning how to put coherent thoughts together yet? Eventually, the sheriff runs out and breaks down the door to help her, and they all run to where Nancy burnt Freddy alive, and she realizes that he got away. And they find that Freddy killed Nancy's mother while she was sleeping. Nancy's father, for some reason, just leaves her in the room where her mother was literally just killed, and Freddy shows up again. Nancy ceases to believe in him, and she takes back all the energy she gave him, demands her mother and friends back, and turns her back on him, and he disappears defeated. She walks out of her house the next morning where it's weirdly foggy, and her mother, alive and well, decides to give up drinking, and Nancy heads off to school with her very much alive friends and boyfriend. The convertible roof of the car slams shut with Freddy's sweater colors, and they get trapped in the car, which starts driving away on its own. The camera pans towards some girls singing the song that Nancy was singing earlier in the bathtub, and jump roping as her mother gets taken by Freddy through the door window, and the movie ends.
What?
Okay, there's a bit to unpack here. So we saw Nancy take away Freddy's energy after ceasing to believe in him and takes back her mother and friend group. When I first watched this movie, I thought Nancy died at the end and this was like her in the afterlife, but Nancy returns in the third movie, so that can't be it. What I think this is Nancy taking back her power over her dreams, so she can have pleasant dreams, dreaming about the people she's lost, yet Freddy still comes back to haunt her in her dreams. I would say this kind of ruins the entire point of her taking back her life and energy, which it definitely does, but throughout the movies I've learned that no matter what, Freddy will always somehow come back. Most of the time, it's unexplained as well. You see, Freddy's kind of like the Springtrap of slasher villains. He just always comes back.
This one's definitely a good start to the series. I don't think it's the best one like everyone says it is, because it still has its slow and boring moments, but I'd say it's definitely easier to watch than something like the first Halloween or Friday the 13th movie.
The effects for 1984 are really great, especially on the small budget they had. Freddy in this one is great, despite him not being really like as funny or enjoyable on screen as he is in the later ones. Like in this one, he's definitely more scary and less committed to making jokes like he is in the later movies, though I really enjoy how they portray the adults as well, just because they never believe the kids. And I think it's a pretty good depiction of how parents never listen to their kids because they always think that they're right on a subject or just straight up ignore what's going on with their kids when something is most definitely obviously wrong. Like, it's not entirely unrealistic in that way, and I really like that. I really don't think this is the best one like everyone says it is, but it's definitely good. I'd say this goes in B tier. A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge.
The best possible way I can describe this movie is kind of like the JoJo's Part 5 to the Nightmare on Elm Street series, being more of a side story than anything. Except JoJo's Part 5 isn't boring and forgettable. I immediately forgot everything about this movie after I watched it. Both times I watched it for this video.
The film opens up with a school bus driving down a neighborhood and the title card plays. Everyone gets off the bus except for two girls and a quiet boy. The girls naturally make fun of the quiet boy, and the bus begins to speed up as they miss one of the girls to stop. The bus charges headfirst into the desert, and it's revealed to be Freddy driving the bus. The bus finally stops as the ground begins to cave in until the only thing left standing above the pit of hell is a couple of tall pillars, just barely balancing. Freddy reveals himself to the kids as they congregate in the back of the bus, throwing it a bit off balance, and one of the pillars collapses. The boy, Jesse, wakes up screaming and is completely oiled up. Jesse's dad tells him that he needs to unpack his room soon, and once more we see a parent that just completely ignores his child's requests and feelings and refuses to fix the air conditioning because he believes he's right about everything and that there's nothing wrong with it. Jesse meets this girl Lisa outside and they drive off to school. At school they play softball or baseball. I can't tell. What is this supposed to be? Jesse gets hit by the ball and his coach is shown to be a complete dick for no reason. Jesse gets into a... Is this supposed to be a fight? He literally tore his pants off, and this looks more like one of them just got back from war and they really missed each other. Anyways, they're forced to do push-ups until the coach tells them to stop, and in the locker room, Jesse and the other boy, Grady, talk about the house that Jesse just moved into. Suddenly, they're friends? Maybe more than friends? I saw those shorts you were wearing, Grady. Don't be ashamed, Queen. You wear those booty shorts loud and proud. Anyways, Grady tells Jesse about the events from the previous film, about how some girl went crazy in that house and was locked in there by her mother. Later that night, Jesse sees Freddy in the boiler room of the house putting something into the furnace. He gets confronted and scared the shit out of by the Burning Man himself, and Freddy tells him that he needs him for something, and Jesse of course wakes up screaming. Later on, Jesse tries to go meet up with the girl Lisa, but his dad makes him unpack his room first. And the way he unpacks his room pisses me off. Like, oh my god, what is that? Who put shoes in their dresser? Jesse, maybe you deserve to be tormented by Freddy. In the middle of him doing whatever this is, Lisa shows up and helps him finish unpacking. She discovers a diary of some sort in Jesse's closet, and they look through it and discovers that it's Nancy from the last movie's diary, detailing her being tormented by Freddy, and Jesse realizes that she was having the same nightmares as him, and that this diary is the diary of the girl who witnessed her boyfriend get murdered across the street and went insane. Jesse goes down into the boiler room and finds Freddy's glove in the furnace. The furnace suddenly lights up, and Freddy shows up telling him to put on the glove. Jesse of course refuses, and Freddy demands Jesse to kill for him. Jesse wakes up after tripping over and realizes that he was sleepwalking, but the glove he was carrying was real. Later that day in the locker room, the boys talk shit about the coach and he catches them and makes them do push-ups again. That night, Jesse wanders around the town at night in the rain due to being unable to sleep, and he ends up in a bar where he's somehow able to get a beer, and he's somehow caught by his coach, who creepily takes him back to the school and makes him run laps around the gymnasium.
Okay, so for some reason, this coach has the right to take one of his students to the school after dark and can get physical with him? I get this was the 80s, but what the f***?
He acts like Jesse can't report this. He doesn't have any blackmail over Jesse because he doesn't have any proof that Jesse was at the bar. Is he stupid? Anyways, the coach starts getting attacked by everything in his office, and he gets BDSM'd by a jump rope who leads him into the shower where Jesse is. Jesse turns into Freddy and kills his coach, being fully possessed by him for a brief moment. Jesse shows back at home with the cops, and his dad interrogates him from taking some sort of drugs. Naturally, the dad being a complete moron and continuing the trend of neglectful parents in these movies. His mom says that he needs help, and of course the dad just doesn't believe anything's wrong and that he just needs a good kick in the butt. This is something that genuinely personally aggravates me because I've seen firsthand parents neglecting their kids because they don't believe mental illness exists and that their kids are just begging for attention. Jesse and Lisa show up to an old power plant where Fred Cougar used to work, and naturally, nothing happens. Freddy nearly gets Jesse to kill his own sister that night, and he decides he needs to stay awake. Jesse starts snapping at his friends and closing himself off, thinking that he's just maybe going insane. Jesse goes to a party at Lisa's house and he tries to leave early, but Lisa talks him out of it, and Jesse opens up to her and tells him that she won't let anything happen to him. They have a little moment together, and whoa, okay, maybe a big moment. It of course gets ruined by Freddy giving him a huge fucking gross tongue, and honestly, I don't know if that exactly ruins it. I feel like any woman would enjoy that. Or man, maybe Grady would like it. Speaking of Grady, Jesse heads to his house and wakes him up in his room and admits to having killed their coach. He tells him about how there's something inside of him and that he needs to stay there for the night. Jesse convinces him to help him and to watch over him and to not let him leave. Later, Jesse wakes up and he can feel it starting to happen again. The glove starts growing out of Jesse's hand as the rest of his skin starts tearing apart, revealing Freddy underneath. They get a pretty sick shot of Freddy waking up inside of Jesse, and Freddy fully awakens through Jesse's body. It's kind of like a Sukuna and Yuji situation, you know? Jesse / Freddy kills Grady and hold up, we need a better name for them. Jetty? Fressy? I think I like Fressy. Jesse wakes back up and he runs back to Lisa's house and tells her that he killed the coach and Grady. He tells her that Freddy is inside of him and at the party some spooky stuff starts happening. While this is happening, Lisa reads Jesse the last page of Nancy's diary, detailing how she defeated him and that he can fight him. Freddy of course reawakens within Jesse again, and Lisa fights against him as the pool starts boiling outside. The party goes quiet until Fressy jumps out and begins terrorizing everyone, killing a bunch of the partygoers in the process. Lisa's dad tries to fight him off with a shotgun, but Lisa stops him since Jesse's still in there. Lisa goes back to the power plant where Freddy used to work to end this once and for all. During the final confrontation, Lisa tells Jesse that she loves him and that causes Jesse to come out a bit. Freddy can feel Jesse fighting back, and you could tell that he's actually scared for the first time in a while and painfully and pathetically melts away and dies. Jesse wakes up and shows that he's okay, having fought against the demon inside of him and won. The film ends with Jesse getting on a school bus, still clearly paranoid about Freddy after everything that went down. Rightfully so, because Freddy continues to haunt him in his dreams, and the film ends with the school bus driving through the desert once more. This one's okay, I guess. I'm probably gonna forget I ever even watched it in a week and forget everything about it. Like, there's a couple of shots I really like in this one, and I really like the concept of Freddy trying to possess a kid, but he fights back against him and wins. It's pretty enjoyable, but again, it's really forgettable. I kind of like this movie, but I probably won't ever choose to watch it over some of the others. I think I'll just put it right smack in C tier. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. This one starts off with a girl making some paper mache. Her bitch mom shows up and forces the girl, Kristen, to go to sleep because she wants to have fun time with a guy downstairs. Kristen of course doesn't want to go to sleep because of horrible nightmares she's been having. The camera pans over to her paper mache house so that she made a mache of the Elm Street house. She falls asleep and suddenly she's at the house and ends up talking to this little girl. She follows her inside for some reason, and then she grabs the little girl when she says that Freddy's home. She gets stuck in some liquid as Freddy shows up and continues to evade him until she gets to a room with a bunch of bodies and looks down at the girl and sees that she's dead. She wakes up and goes to the bathroom where Freddy catches her and cuts her wrist to make it look like she's tried to commit suicide. She's taken to Weston Hills, a psychiatric hospital where Lawrence Fishburne? Okay. We meet Dr. Neil Gordon and a bunch of the kids there. We also meet Dr. Sims, and they're talking about some new interns showing up until they're called to a room where they're trying to sedate Kristen, but she's refusing and fighting back. She starts crying and singing Freddy's song when suddenly Nancy from the first movie shows up and calms her down singing the song with her. Later, she's talking to Dr. Gordon about the kids and how they're all tormented by some kind of boogeyman. Nancy drops her things and Neil helps her pick them up and sees that she has a pill bottle of something called Hypnosil. They have some sort of spark between them, and he asks her what that song they were singing was about, and he sees a nun staring at him down a corridor and she vanishes. Lawrence Fishburne's character, Max, shows Nancy around and introduces her to the kids. We meet this kid Philip, who makes wooden puppets, and another kid Kincaid, who gets thrown in the quiet room often. They pass by this mute kid Joey, who has a big crush on one of the nurses, and Nancy talks to Christian's mother, who just seems frustrated and tired of Christian's strange behavior. But mostly she's just neglectful and uncaring. Nancy walks in Christian's room and sees the paper mache of her old house, and Neil does some research on Nancy's Hypnosil, seeing that it's an experimental drug that suppresses dreams. Later that night, Kristen is drawing the Elm Street house again as she dozes off and sees a tricycle roll in the room, treading in blood, and it starts to melt. She walks out the door and the door slams shut, revealing that she's back inside the Elm Street house. Not gonna lie, that was kind of cool. That had some sauce. She roams around the house until she's attacked by Freddy in a gross, yucky worm form. She screams out for Nancy, who hears her screaming and somehow falls and enters Kristen's dream, saving her from the fucking King Stinker Framp here. Nancy and Kristen talk about what happened and Kristen's strange ability to bring people into her dreams. Afterwards at group, we meet a kid in a wheelchair named Will, who attempted suicide and ended up in the wheelchair because of it, Taryn, who is a recovering heroin addict, and Jennifer, who is inspiring to become a Hollywood actress. Philip talks about how bullshit it is that the doctor thinks they're all in just some sort of mellow mass psychosis, and later Will and Joey take turns sleeping, and Will tells Joey to wake him up if he starts having a nightmare. During this, Nancy and Neil go out to a restaurant where Nancy tries to convince him to prescribe the kids Hypnosil to try and save them from their dreams. Neil rejects the idea because he doesn't want to prescribe them some strange experimental drug that hasn't even been approved by any committee yet. Later that night, Freddy awakens through a puppet in Philip's room that he carved and slashes his arm and legs and takes control of him like a puppet master using his muscles and tendons. Freddy makes him walk over to a ledge, and Joey sees this and wakes up Will. Joey runs out to try to get some help, and then he wakes everyone up, and they all rush over to the window to try to wake up Philip, instead of, going to where he is. But before any help can even arrive, Freddy cuts the wires, and Philip falls to his death. At group, they talk about what happened. The doctors think it was suicide, but the kids know that he was murdered. Dr. Sims, of course, refuses to listen to the kids, and sends Kincaid to the quiet room for literally just protesting. Neil prescribes the kids Hypnosil after seeing how terrified they are of their dreams, and he convinces Dr. Sims of it, and later that night, Jennifer convinces Max to let her stay up late watching TV so she can research acting, and also just she's too scared to go to sleep. She of course dies by getting her head thrown into the TV, and we see them really starting to embrace Freddy as a jokester asshole here.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch.
At Jennifer's funeral, Neil's approached by the nun he saw earlier, and she tells him her name, Sister Mary Helena, and realizes that she does volunteer work at the hospital every now and then. She tells him that there's a spirit, an affront to God that needs to be laid to rest. They're approached by Nancy, and she asks him who he's talking to, and he turns back around to see that Sister Helena vanished. Later that night, Nancy opens up to Neil about everything, about Freddy, about the nightmares, and then the next day they have an unofficial group without Dr. Sims, and Nancy opens up to the kids as well as about Freddy, about how she knows him, and telling the kids that they're not crazy, and how 6 years ago he killed all of her friends, and how Freddy died originally. Nancy tells Kristen that she has an amazing ability and she could use it to defeat him. Neil attempts to use hypnosis to put them all to sleep, and Joey walks out and sees a nurse she has a crush on leading him to a room. Alone. She confesses that she likes him as well and straight up grooms him. Back in the group room, they all somehow don't notice that Joey's missing, but they do notice that they're actually asleep and dreaming. Will stands up out of the chair as a wizard master, Kristen could do acrobatics, Kincaid has insane strength, and Taryn is a goth punk. Meanwhile, Joey continues to be sexually assaulted, and it's of course revealed to be Freddy, who ties him to the bed above the pit of hell. Saddest part is, Joey is unable to even scream for help. The lights are going haywire in the group room, and finally they realize that Joey's missing, and the room starts breaking down and falling apart. The walls start closing in on them when suddenly the door opens and Dr. Sims finds them all asleep in the room with Joey in the middle of it unconscious. Turns out he's in a coma, and Neil gets fired due to the fact that there's been 2 suicides, a kid in a coma, mass panic among the patients, and he prescribed an experimental drug to the kids. As he's packing his things up in the trunk of his car, he sees Sister Helena from the funeral in the bell tower. He makes his way up the tower and finds her up top. She tells him about the wing they're currently in, the wing that's been closed down for years, ever since the 40s. It's where they kept the most vile and unstable patients. She tells him about a poor girl who was accidentally locked in there with 100 maniacs and was raped hundreds of times. The child that was conceived from it was Fred Krueger, and the only way to end everything is to lay him to rest in hollowed ground. Freddy taunts Nancy, telling her to come and get Joey back, and Nancy and Neil go to a bar and meet with her father. Back at the hospital, Kristen refuses to be sedated and fights back, getting thrown in the quiet room, screaming at Sims that she's gonna get them all killed. Nancy begs her father to tell her where Freddy's remains are, and he of course refuses because he refuses to believe that Freddy's still lurking around. Nancy leaves in frustration, and Neil gets paged by Taryn, so he calls and she tells him that they sedated Kristen in the quiet room, and then Nancy rushes over to the hospital to help Kristen as Neil rightfully violently forces Sheriff Thompson to show him where Freddy's remains are. Neil and Thompson make a quick stop at the church to grab some holy water and a crucifix. Max stops Nancy from seeing Kristen, but he allows her to say goodbye to the others in the TV room. They all head to the group room as Thompson and Neil shows up to a junkyard. Nancy and the others hypnotize themselves to sleep as Kristen herself falls asleep in the quiet room. They all appear in there with her, and they all vow to save Joey. Freddy begins attacking as the opening scene reenacts, showing off a more loving and less neglectful mother, right before Freddy shows up to traumatize her. She runs away from him, ending back up at the house. Taryn hears Kristen calling for help and ends up in a dark hallway where a fight between her and Freddy ensues. Freddy sticks heroin in her arms, causing her to overdose and die as Joey finds himself in a dark hallway. Freddy torments him, yet Joey finds the confidence in himself to fight back as the Wizard Master. Freddy kills him anyways. Nancy and Kristen fight each other as Kincaid bursts through the wall to meet up with him. Kincaid starts talking shit and rage baiting Freddy as an iron door appears to them. They walk through. Meanwhile, at the junkyard, Neil and Thompson finds Freddy's remains as the other 4 find Joey tied up over the pit of hell. They fight against Freddy and save Joey from falling, and Nancy impales Freddy with a metal pole, but it of course does nothing, and Nancy says that Freddy's getting stronger. Freddy confirms this by saying the souls of the kids he kills gives him strength, and back at the junkyard, Neil and Thompson are trapped and then attacked by Freddy's skeleton. He kills Sheriff Thompson and knocks Neil unconscious in the grave they dug and begins to bury him alive right before falling to pieces. Freddy shows back up in the others' dreams, pulling them all through mirrors, and Joey watches in horror. He stands up and finally finds his voice, screaming out and breaking the mirrors, saving the other 3. They hug it out because they think it's finally over. Nancy's dad shows up as a spirit, telling her that he's crossed over and how sorry he is about everything. Turns out, it was just Freddy tricking her and stabs Nancy right in the stomach. He locks Nancy and Kristen in there with him, and right before he kills Kristen, Nancy from behind him stabs him with his own glove. And back at the junkyard, Neil wakes back up and buries Freddy's remains, pours holy water on his bones, and banishes him. Kristen holds Nancy as she bleeds out and dies. At her funeral, Neil sees Sister Helena once more and follows her, only to find her gravestone. Sister Mary Helena, Amanda Kruger, Freddy's mother. Neil, falling asleep in his house, kept the paper mache that Kristen made, I guess? And then the lights turn on in the house and the movie ends, showing that Freddy's gonna come back. Of course. Somehow. I like this one a lot. It's a lot of fun and nice to see characters from the first movie return developing them. But it of course gets ruined because they just had to have Freddy ruin it. It's not even a thing of like, oh well yeah, he's the villain and he's literally Freddy, of course he's gonna ruin it. It's a thing that the writers literally would not allow their characters to be actual developed characters.
They were so close. They're right there. They're literally, they're right there, right there.
This one, the first one, New Nightmare, and I believe the 2010 one were the only ones written by Wes Craven. Like, I just don't understand why he doesn't allow his characters to be actual characters with complete stories and arcs. Like, again, it's supposed to be Freddy ruins everything, but this could have been a moment where they let it be an actual film, you know? That's really my only complaint with this one, other than the fact that they literally do not explain Kristen's dreams powers or how she's able to do what she could do. I'm not really blaming this movie for that, since she is a returning character, and the other movies had the chance to fully explain it, but they really don't, really. But other than that, I enjoy it. I enjoy this one a lot, and I think I'll just give it an A tier. A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. This one starts off with, in alphabetical order? I don't think I've ever seen a movie where the cast was listed in alphabetical order. You're a psychopath, and you should be locked up.
Oh, that drawing sucks. You'll never make it in life with that. Yeah, that's what you get. Even the gods are telling you to quit. That's divine intervention.
So this girl in the white dress, wait, hold on. I'm sorry, you call that throwing a ball? Come on, at least step back a bit. That's literally nothing, man. Challenge yourself at least. So this is Kristen from the last movie. Why did they recast? I think the first actress that played her said she wanted to do like meatier roles than horror, which is a bit odd to say, but fair, I guess. She's walking through the old Elm Street house, wondering where Freddy is. She screams out for Joey and Kincaid, whose actors actually do return. She tries to tell them that Freddy's here, but they don't believe her because Freddy's supposed to be dead. When Kincaid's dog suddenly runs out and bites Kristen, and they all wake up. Kristen picks up her friend Alice and boyfriend Rick. Alice and Rick are siblings, and their father is just great.
You going out dressed like that?
What's wrong with it this time?
Alice daydreams about flirting with this guy Dan, and their friend Debbie runs off to meet with their other friend Sheila. Debbie is shown to have entomophobia, and Sheila has asthma. Joey and Kincaid confront Kristen about what happened the night before, and they tell her not to worry. Rick for some reason has beef with them, and later that night he's shown to be practicing martial arts. Alice daydreams about telling her father off, who desperately deserves it. Kincaid falls asleep and is suddenly at the junkyard from the previous film where they buried and burned Freddy's remains. No. That's completely normal. That's actually what happens to me when I try to sit through an entire film starring Amy Schumer. Freddy somehow revives because of Kincaid's dog, I guess, and Kincaid runs around the junkyard and dumps a whole ass car on top of Freddy. He of course celebrates too soon, and some more spooky shit starts happening. Kincaid screams out for Kristen, screaming that Freddy's back. Freddy catches up to him and kills him. We then see Joey falling asleep, and his bed suddenly turns into water, and a girl from the post area suddenly appears under the water. Like, Joey, come on, now's not the time to be horny, dude. She's drowning under there, man. Save her. She's gonna drown, dude. Freddy, of course, grabs him with a genuinely kind of a pretty funny line.
How's this for a wet dream?
He then drags them under and kills them as well. Alice and Rick talk about their mother who passed away, and how if their mother was still alive, their father wouldn't treat them like he does. Rick tries to teach Alice how to stand up for herself and tries to teach her some martial arts moves. The next day, Alice finds Kristen, and Kristen asks her if she's seen Joey or Kincaid. Kristen asks how she's able to handle her nightmares, and Alice tells her about the Dream Master, that there's a rhyme that you tell yourself when you're falling asleep and you take control of your dreams. When they walk into class, Kristen notices both Kincaid and Joey's desks completely empty and starts freaking out. When Rick tries to calm her down, she flies back and somehow knocks herself out. Are you stupid? Kristen gets scared by Freddy in the nurse's office, and she tells the others how Kincaid and Joey were murdered. They head over to Freddy's house, and Rick catches Dan up on Freddy. Also, why is Dan even here?
I ask myself that same question every night.
Kristen's bitch mother shows up again and assaults our ears, and Alice sees the little girl's shit-ass, f***ass, poo-poo-ass drawing from the opening. At dinner, Kristen's dumbass mother puts sleeping pills in her water, and she of course is pissed off because she basically just murdered her. Kristen stumbles upstairs and tries to call Alice, but doesn't make it, and she falls asleep telling herself to dream something fun like Alice told her. She dreams of a beach, of a little girl named Alice building a sandcastle in the sand. Now that's talent! Now that's something to be proud of. Freddy shows up in a— No! Man, that little girl's gonna be so upset, dude. Now, come on. Do you know how long that probably took her to make? Freddy buries Kristen in the sand and she's right back at the house. Apparently Kristen's the last of the Elm Street children, the last of the children of the adults who killed Freddy, and Kristen accidentally calls in Alice to her dream. She tries to attack Freddy, but he tosses her in the furnace, and right before she dies, she hands off Alice her powers. Alice and Rick rush over to Kristen's fucking Harry Potter ass mansion and find her entire room on fire and Kristen dead. She gets buried right next to Nancy and her father, Kincaid, and presumably Joey. Actually, a nice touch I really love. I love that they still remember Nancy exists. Too bad they forgot about that later on. Sheila shows Alice this device they made that's supposed to scare off bugs with ultra high sound waves, and in class, Sheila and Alice are trolled a bit by Freddy, and Alice is locked in her desk, helpless to do anything for Sheila. Freddy drains the life out of her and turns her into like a fucking raisin, and Alice wakes up and Sheila dies of an asthma attack. Alice flies back from some sort of energy hitting her, and at work, Alice and Dan talk a bit about what's been happening. Rick falls asleep in the toilet and is of course attacked and tormented by Freddy, and he ends up in some sort of martial arts dojo and ends up fighting an invisible Freddy. Rick gets up and starts beating his ass, like, yeah! Go Rick, yeah! Go Rick, oh yeah! Beat his ass, Rick! Get his ass! He dies. Alice once more feels some sort of energy hit her when Rick dies, and at his funeral, Debbie and Dan vow to help her take down Freddy tonight. They vow to meet up at the diner she works at, and Alice says a phrase that Sheila used to say: mind over matter. Dan and Debbie realize that after every death, Alice changes, and Alice takes Rick's nunchucks and starts going to town with him like, god damn, she hit that shit. She wonders what's happening to her, and when she tries to leave, her dad actually tries to stop her. I really like that they actually allow her dad to be like, you know, a person, a character. Like, he lost his wife and his son, and now he really doesn't want to lose his daughter as well. It's really nice to see her dad waking up and becoming a better father after Rick's death. Alice shows up at the diner and doesn't find Dan, so she for some reason goes to the movie theater? The movie she watches shows the diner she works at, all old and boarded up, and a strong wind blows through, blowing her away into the film itself. She turns back and sees everyone who's died performing a standing applause and seals herself asleep. Damn, this movie actually kinda has some sauce. She meets an older version of herself still working at the diner, and Freddy orders the pizza with the souls of the ones he's killed. Freddy tells her to bring him more, and Alice instinctively calls in Debbie to her dream. Alice jolts awake and rushes over to the diner. She meets up with Dan and they rush over to save Debbie. They show up at her house and suddenly they're back at the diner. They get in the car and take off. Again. We then see Freddy spot Debbie's bench pushing. How kind of him. You know, you shouldn't bench press without a spotter, you know. He pushes the bar down like, dude, just fucking move. Oh my god, Debbie. You see, that would have happened if you just had some fucking common sense and move. Bug arms go at her and she starts running away, freaking out. Alice once more runs past the diner towards Dan, and they get in the car and take off again. And then Dan says he has a weird feeling that they've done this before, as Debbie continues to be tormented and played with by Freddy. Once again, Alice and Dan loop, and they realize that they're both asleep. Debbie turns fully into a bug, and Freddy crushes and kills her. Alice collects her just like the others, and Alice rams Freddy with the truck, and yeah, that probably wasn't the smartest idea. Dan is taking the surgery while Alice drives back to her house and gears up for a final showdown with Freddy. Fish. She fully embraces everyone's power she's obtained and goes in to find Freddy. Freddy tries to get Dan while he's asleep in surgery, and Alice breaks through to save him. The movie shows off some more sauce while they run away from Freddy, and Dan starts waking up in surgery due to him hemorrhaging, leaving Alice to face Freddy alone. Damn, they just can't stop having good shots in this one, can they? Alice and Freddy duke it out, and Alice grabs electricity from the wall and uses Sheila device and turns Freddy into a donut. That, of course, does nothing. Dude, also, side note, I just have to say that Robert Englund does such an amazing job at Freddy. He's actually perfect. Anyways, Alex picks up a reflective piece of stained glass and uses it as a mirror, forcing evil to see itself, and that causes the souls of the ones he killed to free themselves and kill Freddy, once and for all. Just kidding, there's still 5 more films. Alice and Dan walk through the park together, finally being able to actually be together. They make a wish at a fountain which you can see Freddy's reflection in because he always comes back. Alice ignores it and they walk away together and the movie ends. I like this one, honestly. I think I liked it better the second time I watched it, and honestly, I think this was the best one so far. The characters are nice. My only complaint with it is that it continues the annoying slasher trend of killing the characters from the previous film. But at least this time it makes sense, I guess. The cinematography is weirdly good as hell and the film visually looks great. I'm a complete sucker for good cinematography. I'm gonna stick this baby right up an A tier. A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. The title card is pretty cool on this one. I like how it scratches to form to the words a nightmare, and then on Elm Street is like the color and font of a street sign. And then The Dream Child is written in chalk as if by a child. Hopefully, not by that girl in the last one, because she needs to stay away from art. This one opens up with, stuff I don't think I can show on YouTube. Sex. It's sex! Ew! Genuinely watching this, it's hard to tell what parts of the body I'm looking at. Is that a knee? Someone's shoulder? A bald head? What is going on? What am I looking at? Afterwards, we meet Alice from the previous film, taking a shower after engaging in some disgusting disgusting coitus. Suddenly, some poo caca starts coming up from the drain and the water gets boiling hot and the shower starts to break apart, beginning to flood. She gets trapped inside and the door suddenly swings open and she's in some dark, creepy hallway. Naked. Girl, you're gonna get tetanus! Suddenly, she's in a nun uniform, and it's clear that she's in some sort of asylum, presumably Weston Hills from the third film. Someone's counting all the lunatics like, dude, this is gonna be the most inefficient way of counting people, like, come on, man. Alice looks down at her name tag and sees this as Amanda Kruger. The 100 maniacs begin swarming her and she wakes up screaming next to Dan from the previous film. She suddenly gets attacked by a lunatic before waking up for real this time. Really sick and strong with the double dream trope here, huh? The next scene, Alice is graduating from high school with her friends. We meet Greta, whose mother is super strict and controlling because she wants her daughter to be a model for some weird, creepy reason. Mark wants to be a comic artist, and finally, Yvonne, who works as a nurse that is also a professional diver as well. Alice is jump scared by Dan, who she tells him that she doesn't see her dad anywhere, and tells him about the dream she had last night. How for the first time since the last film, she wasn't in control of her dreams. Dan gets taken away by his parents and a big guy in football who can help him make a career, and Alice walks away upset that her father didn't show up. But then suddenly surprised by her father, having just stayed out of sight for the ceremony because he didn't want to embarrass her.
Oh! Do my eyes deceive me? Oh, could it be an actual grown character? Oh my god, character development!
They all take a picture together and Alice runs off to work, and she's crossing through a playground where she sees some girls jump roping and singing Freddy's song. She runs after them and suddenly it's nighttime and a little girl sings that he's back again. Jesus Christ, this movie actually looks really good, especially for the time, dude. Freddy's mom appears before Alice and oh my god, the cinematography! Wow! Alice runs after her and starts wandering through the asylum. She falls down and suddenly she's on a gurney being taken through the asylum halls. She starts screaming and panicking and she looks around and sees herself standing there. Suddenly she's watching Amanda Kruger on the table giving birth. What comes out surprises the nurses and the doctors. A nun says it's still one of God's creatures, but Amanda says that it is definitely not one of God's creatures. Freddy runs out as just barely like a fetus, and Alice is left alone in the room. Jesus, this movie has so much sauce. Alice walks through the doors and finds herself back in the chapel where the climax of the previous film took place. She finds the fetus of Freddy crawling up towards his clothes where he died in the last one. He screams and the entire chapel starts breaking apart. This is actually a beautiful metaphor for why you shouldn't have kids, ladies and gentlemen. Oh yeah, Freddy's back! For like the 4th time. He always comes back. Amanda suddenly shows up and vows to destroy him, and Freddy retreats. Amanda tells Alice that she must be released from her earthly prison, and she runs out and finds herself at the diner where she works. Somehow, even though she was fully awake, she was in a dream sequence and she's 4 hours late to work. At a grad party, the group is hanging out and talking when suddenly Dan gets a phone call from Alice who tells him that Freddy's back. Dan rushes over to her and he weirdly looks like Ludwig here. Ludwig, did you travel back in time to hide from the fact that your balls were leaked in the internet? He's of course attacked by Freddy, gets into a crash, and gets thrown through the window back at the pool. He gets on a bike and continues to speed towards Alice, with Freddy suddenly turning into the bike like Arky. And back at the diner, Alice feels Dan's death. She runs up the diner and sees the crash in Dan's body, who Freddy possesses for a second to scare her, and suddenly she wakes up in the hospital. Yvonne, who as mentioned earlier works here as a nurse, tells her that Dan's been in an accident and is dead. They also tell Alice that she's a little pregnant. The does a little pregnant mean? You're either pregnant or you're not, Yvonne. You're supposed to be a nurse. Don't you know anything? Are you stupid? Later that night, a boy named Jacob shows up to her room and talks to her, trying to make her feel better. Somehow he knows that Dan died and he just walks off. The next day, Alice asks Yvonne about Jacob and she tells him that they don't even have a children's ward or any kid named Jacob as a patient in the hospital. Later, she tells the group about Freddy and his lore! The lore! They of course don't believe her about Freddy or about Dan's death being from Freddy. They still support her though, and later that night, Alice talks with her father, who is actually incredibly supportive and says that it'll be nice to hear a boy running around again since Rick was killed in the last one. Next up, we see Greta and her mother at some extravagant dinner, and just like normal rich people, they couldn't give less of a shit about her feelings. She tells her mother off, and of course Freddy shows up. Freddy stuffs her full of food and causes her to joke to death in front of everyone at the party, and everyone of course laughs. God, I hate rich people. Alice feels Greta's death, and her and Yvonne goes to see Mark at work. Yvonne is in denial, and why are you just like the king of pop? Mark keeps his mind open about the whole thing now, especially since 2 people in their group died within just a couple of days. Literally one of the smartest people in these movies. Yvonne heads up to go diving or work or whatever, I wasn't listening there. And Alice and Mark heads to Mark's place, and Mark falls asleep while waiting for Alice to make coffee. She sees that Mark drew Freddy's house and sees him walking towards it. She does a weirdly really smart thing and draws herself on the picture and is able to actually transport herself there. She finds Mark dangling over the pit of hell and saves him just before he passes out from seeing blood and falls in the floor. Something I didn't mention, he is very squeamish to blood. Alice suddenly sees Jacob again in the dream, and he tells her that his mom doesn't want him around, and then proceeds to say that Alice doesn't want him around, basically confirming that Jacob is actually her future son. She runs up to Jacob and finds herself back at Mark's art studio awake. Mark realizes that Freddy's real, and Alice tells Mark that he's after Jacob, her future son. Mark tells Alice to have a doctor check out her baby, and Yvonne still of course doesn't believe her, and Alice asks the doctor if unborn babies can have dreams and nightmares. He says that they spend most of their time in a dreamlike state and perform an ultrasound, and I'm sorry, didn't she get pregnant like a couple days ago? How is there already like a grown fetus? Do they not know how pregnancy works? She's suddenly transported inside of her uterus and sees her unborn child and sees Freddy feeding Jacob souls of the ones he's killed. She jokes up and tells Yvonne that Freddy's feeding him the souls of the ones he's killed, and here we find out that Freddy's been using Jacob in his constant dreamlike state to put Alice into these nightmares. And the next scene we see Alice wearing a Roblox shirt and Mark shows up with information on Freddy. Yvonne refuses to look at the information, and this is genuinely realistic with how people are nowadays. Mark and Alice talk about Amanda and try to figure out how to free her soul. She tells Mark to stay awake and watch over her because that's gone well the past 4 fucking times this happened in this series. We see Yvonne get in a hot tub while Alice searches for Amanda, and dude, they just can't stop cooking with the cinematography. Holy shit. Yvonne gets out of the hot tub, and right before she takes a dive in the pool, she gets taken by Freddy and lands right inside of Dreamland. Freddy leads Alice to Yvonne for some reason, and she impales Freddy with a pool cleaner and they get away. Freddy is unable to enter the rest of the asylum because of Amanda, and Yvonne finally realizes that Alice was right all along. Back with Mark, he's reading some comics, and he sees himself reading the comic in the book and gets taken into the comic book itself. This part is genuinely really cool and creative because it's all black and white except for Mark. Freddy torments Mark with Greta, who he had a big crush on, and this enrages him into becoming his own comic book hero and fights back against Freddy. But Freddy unfortunately turns into Super Freddy and kills him. His death scene is unironically a super creative death scene. Like, they just can't stop cooking with this movie. Alice wakes up and sees Mark crushed by all the shells and dead. Yvonne wakes up in the hot tub and makes her way over to Mark's art studio, and Alice tells Yvonne that Mark's dead and tells her that she needs to find Amanda at the asylum and free her. Yvonne searches the abandoned asylum, and Alice falls asleep to face off against Freddy one last time. Again. Alice baits out Freddy and takes him to where he was conceived by impaling him with a baby stroller. It's nice to see Freddy genuinely afraid here. Like, it's honestly just nice to see a slasher villain be genuinely afraid in general. He gets ripped apart by the 100 maniacs, and Spider start crawling all over Alice, and she overhears Freddy manipulating Jacob.
Jacob, run!
Jacob, run or something, man. Just, you know, if you feel like it, if you wanna.
Dan suddenly shows up, but is actually Freddy in disguise, and Alice reaches Jacob, and Freddy starts taking over Alice's body as Yvonne finds Amanda's resting place. She then frees her from her earthly prison, and Amanda shows up to where Alice is struggling with Freddy and tells Jacob that only he can save his mother. Jacob turns around with a scarred face like Freddy and says that he wants to learn from Freddy. Of course, fooling him, and Jacob unleashes the power that Freddy's given him, and the souls of the ones he's killed takes him towards Amanda, turning him into an infant as Jacob also turns back into an infant, creating a weirdly beautiful parallel between Amanda and Alice as they both take back in their children. Amanda goes back into the asylum, keeping Freddy imprisoned within her, and within the asylum, and Alice, her father, and Yvonne have a beautiful picnic together. Freddy is now gone forever. Except he's not. Because we see the girls jump rope again. He always comes back, I guess. This one, in my opinion, is actually really great. I really liked this one. I really enjoy it. I think it's probably my favorite one upon rewatch. Like, the music, the cinematography is even better in this one. The characters are actually great, and I really love the depiction and message about motherhood. It's really beautiful. I think it has the problem of still not explaining Alice's abilities that she gained from Kristen, but I feel like that should have probably been explained in the movie where it was introduced or in the previous one, but they literally just never explain it, and at this point, I just kind of accept that it's just a thing now. And I guess probably it's just a thing where, like, you could just control your dreams and take back power over your dreams like how Nancy did in the first one. And besides, I'm willing to look past any problems this movie has because I just genuinely think it's that great. I would definitely come back to this one, and I think I'm gonna give it an S tier because I just don't think any of the other ones come close to beating it, even with its problems. Freddy's Dead, the final nightmare.
This is it. The final nightmare. It's the last one. Except it's not. Because there's still 2 or 3 movies after this. I'm getting pretty sick of these lies.
This one opens up with a graphic detailing that 10 years from now in Springwood, Ohio, all teenagers and kids have been killed and there is mass psychosis among the adults. So that means that the entire last movie doesn't matter since we know that Alice and Jacob and Yvonne were probably just killed off screen then. We see the last remaining teenager in our plane freaking out a bit since he's afraid of heights. A little girl peeks over her seat and tells him that Freddy's gonna make him help him because he's the last. The woman next to him flies out and he says that it's not fair because he was almost out and falls out of the plane himself. Right before he lands on top of his house, he wakes up in his bed. But then suddenly his house is falling through the sky. He jumps out of the window right as the house lands, and I think this is supposed to be a Wizard of Oz reference. The camera pans over to show that we're at Freddy's house address, and he tries to run but keeps falling down this hill. Like, buddy, I don't know how you're still falling. Just stand the f up. This is entirely you at this point. Most of this hill is flat. It's barely even a hill, man. He gets hit by a bus driven by Freddy and he gets thrown out of Dreamland and hits his head on a rock and gets knocked out. Freddy says to go fetch and the kid wakes up and starts walking. We get to a youth shelter where we meet a kid named Spencer whose dad is rich and wants him to be like him, but Spencer doesn't listen to him. A woman who works for the shelter named Maggie talks to him and Spencer for some reason makes pipe bombs? I've watched this twice and I'm still lost on that. A girl named Tracy who doesn't like to be touched gets hit on by a deaf kid named Carlos, and the John Doe kids gets picked up by the cops and taken to the shelter. The main three, being Tracy, Spencer, and Carlos, have a breakout planned, and we meet this doctor who they just call Doc. Doc tells Maggie about dream therapy, and Maggie talks about this recurring nightmare she has. Doc tells her about some ancient dream demons who scour the lands searching for the most vile human to give the power to be able to cross the line between dreams and reality to, obviously referring to Freddy. John Doe shows up with amnesia and he tells Maggie that he refuses to fall asleep. Maggie looks through his stuff and figures out that he's from Springwood. She falls asleep and dreams of running through a beautiful garden as a little girl, playing with her father until she hears her mother scream and she wakes up. John Doe wakes up and follows the little girl through Freddy's home, saying that she won't tell. He finds himself in a padded room and he tells him that he's his memory. He wakes up accidentally somehow knocking a security guard through a window. I don't know, man. He tells Maggie what he remembers from his dream and remembers the water tower from the article she was looking at earlier. They realize they dreamt of the same girl and Maggie decides to take John Doe to Springwood. They nearly crash on the way though, with John Doe grabbing the wheel to avoid hitting the little girl on the road, and they discover the other three kids in the back trying to break out. They pull over at a fun fair and Maggie tells the three to find a phone and call the police or the shelter. They look around and realize that there's no kids at this town fair. The three get pulled up on by some weird delusional lady who asks them to come with her, saying that she'll hide them better so that he doesn't find them. A bell in the tower starts ringing and Maggie tells them to get in the van and drive themselves back, and she takes John Doe to the school where the bell rang and the other three go around in circles trying to find the way out. The children were indoor, huh? Except they clearly didn't. You're a goddamn liar. Maggie and John Doe find a chalk drawing of Freddy while the other three continue to go in circles, unable to find their way out. Hey man, that's inappropriate. That's his own personal life. Mind your own business, you know? That's personal. Maggie and John walk into a classroom where delusional teacher is teaching an imaginary class, and Maggie finds a bunch of missing posters and articles about dead children, and they figure out that John was there. The teacher tells them about how Freddy's child was taken away from him, and the other three give up for now and decide to find a place to rest for the night. And they of course just happen to find a house on Elm Street to rest, and the outside of the house explodes and turns into Freddy's house. Carlos lays down and goes to sleep, but wakes up when he hears Tracy calling out for him. He turns the corner and finds himself in a weird alleyway of apartments and gets bullied by Freddy. He cuts off his hearing aid like, wow, Freddy, you just had to mess with the deaf one, huh? Don't be like Freddy. Don't be ableist. Or a pedophilic child murderer. I don't even know what to say to that. What? Tracy can't find Carlos anywhere and gets the van to look for him, and Spencer gets baked on the couch while Maggie and John continue to search in some kind of foster home / orphanage. John realizes that he's Freddy's lost kid. He thinks that's the only reason he's still alive and why everyone seems so afraid of him. Tracy shows up to get their help finding Carlos, and they rush back over to the house to save Spencer.
This is your brain on drugs. Questions?
Yeah! What are you on? Looks like a frying pan and some eggs to me.
Hey man, you stole that joke from JonTron, man. Like, you can't do that, even though he said some shit you shouldn't have like 10 years ago. You still can't do that, man. You can't steal jokes like that, man. You gotta give credit. Come on, man, don't do that.
Spencer starts having a hell of a trip and ends up in a video game that Freddy's playing. Spencer starts fighting against his father in the game and
Now I'm playing with power.
hey dude, Nintendo won't like that. You better say sorry or you know what's gonna happen. Also, why do you say that? You're not even playing on a Nintendo console or anything.
Great graphics.
No, Freddy. The line is nice graphics. God, he f***ed it up again. Alright, everyone, take 24. They find Spencer getting the shit kicked out of him by Freddy and...
Okay, never mind, this movie's peak. You can't make this shit up.
John gets Tracy to knock him out, and they're somehow able to be in the same dream? I thought that only Kristen and Alice were able to do that. These kids haven't been taking over control of the dreams. Why are they able to do this? Anyways, they unplug Freddy's controller, and... Freddy, you have a fucking power glove? You're the biggest fucking loser ever, dude. Spencer falls into hell and dies, and Maggie wakes up Tracy while she was fighting against Freddy, and they grab John and escape. In Dreamland, Freddy kills John Doe by making him fall to his death on a bed of spikes. So, What was the point of this character even existing? Why have him even be the slightest bit interesting? I'm getting really fucking sick and tired of the slasher trend of killing off the main character halfway through and making a less interesting character the main character. Freddy collects his soul and I guess goes inside of Maggie and somewhat confirms that she's actually his kid instead of John Doe. I don't know, man. This movie is so disgustingly messy. This movie also kind of has the same plot of Blade Runner 2049. Like, what is going on? Did 2049 take the idea from this movie? Did everyone universally hate this movie so much that no one chooses to remember it exists? You know, I think they were valid in taking this idea for 2049. You know, an actual good movie. Back at the Yuga shelter, no one remembers Carlos, Spencer, or John Doe at all, except for Doc, who remembers him because he can control his own dreams. What? Maggie realizes that she's probably Freddy's daughter and goes to her mother's house and tries to figure out who her real parents are. Back in Dreamland, we see Maggie as a little girl again and her mother comes out from the basement screaming, crying to him, telling him that she won't tell. Maggie goes inside the basement and finds the room where she made his claws and a bunch of newspaper articles about him and photos of the kids he's murdered. Freddy calls her by her given name, Catherine, and around this point I got sick of watching this movie and writing the script that this movie, God, it's just so bad. Anyways, Freddy leaves the cellar and tells her that he's powerful enough to move towns and kill all the kids in other towns now. Freddy torments Tracy by having her dead, abusive father, Anyway, she beats the shit out of him and oh, what the f, man, what the f? She beats the f out of Freddy and burns herself to wake herself up. Freddy tries to attack Doc, but naturally gets the shit beaten out of him. Freddy tells him the different ways they tried to kill him, but somehow forgetting about the last 2 movies where he was killed in ways that wasn't burning, burying, or holy water. Like, those last 2 ways he mentions were one movie, and at the same time, dumbass, did they even watch the last 2 movies before making this one? Doc realizes he can bring out things from his dreams into reality. Doc gives Maggie some 3D glasses because in here they're nothing, but in the dream they could be anything she wants.
I don't fucking know, dude. Don't ask me.
In the dream, Maggie puts on the glasses and they just vanish, I guess? Not really sure what the point of those were. Freddy shows Maggie his backstory, showing classic signs of a psychopath at an early age, such as killing small animals, and we see him being tormented by other kids his age for being the son of 100 maniacs. I think this is supposed to show that he killed all the kids of the children he went to school with originally. He then shows her that he started to enjoy pain and stopped feeling it and was abused by his stepfather. He then shows her the night that he was killed by the parents and he was approached by the dream demons and they give him the power to walk the lines between dreams and reality. Suddenly we're back in Maggie's dream showing that Fred kills Maggie's mother after discovering the cellar. She tells him that she won't tell and Maggie fights Freddy and brings him to reality. She says that she's still seeing things the way she was seeing things in her dream. What does that even mean? What significance does that have? The glasses literally meant jack shit. They go to the arsenal that I guess Spencer put together, and for some reason they haven't given all of this to the police yet. They say they haven't gotten the chance, as if the police weren't there at all times during the beginning of the movie. And there's just so much! So you're telling me that the only purpose of this character existing was for them to have weapons to fight against Freddy in the climax? This movie sucks fuck. Maggie finds Freddy unburnt in the basement and gets locked in the room with him. What is the point of this room? Why does this room exist? Why is there a fucking metal door in this room? What the hell is going on with anything in this movie? They throw Maggie the pipe bomb from earlier in the movie and she sticks it in Freddy and they run away as Freddy explodes and dies and the dream demons fly away. Suddenly the glasses reappear. What was the point of these fucking glasses? They do a name drop.
Freddy's dead.
And then the movie ends, showing a bunch of classic moments from the original 5 films, and at the end they have a cute little rest in peace to Freddy.
Man, that was straight poop from a butt.
There is genuinely almost nothing redeeming about this movie other than like the concept, I guess. But they fumble it so bad in the execution. Like, other than that, there is literally nothing else good about this movie. The characters are boring and generic. They don't even give the slightly interesting one anything because they fucking kill him off halfway through for no reason other than to serve as a, oh, he wasn't actually Freddy's kid, and to be the final Springwood kid. That would have been more interesting than characters from another town. This movie visually looks like and just genuinely hurts to watch. Also, what was the point at the beginning saying 10 years from now in that graphic? That doesn't make any sense if you're not gonna make the movie take place 10 years from the last one. Why say 10 years from now if there's no now in the movie? Do they not know how writing works? Anyways, this movie is so hard to get through. It is the worst one. Worst one so far. Anyways, this goes in D because at least the concept's cool, even though they fucking fumbled it hard. Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Okay, this one's kind of weird. This one's a very meta film. It takes place outside of the main Nightmare on Elm Street canon, and in this one, the Nightmare on Elm Street films are actual films, and all the actors and actresses play themselves in this as actors in the films.
I don't know. I don't know.
This one opens up with a reimagining of the original film's opening with a man in a red striped sweater designing some sort of metal claw hand. Except this time it's full of metallic and he replaces his hand in general with it. Once he cuts his hand off, it's revealed to be a movie set. We see Nancy, or well, Heather Langenkamp actually playing herself in the movie, on the set with her child Dylan and her husband Chase. Suddenly, the animatronic hand designed for the film starts acting on its own and stabs one of the special effects artists in the throat. It kills another one of them, and right before it gets chased, Heather wakes up in the middle of an earthquake. This is why you choose not to live in California, kids. Heather and Chase rush to Dylan to protect him from the earthquake and it ends. Heather talks to Chase about the dream she had, and they talk about this weird stalker that keeps calling her. He hasn't called in weeks, so they think maybe it's over, but she can't stop being afraid of him. In Heather's dream, Chase cut his fingers, but also when they woke up, his fingers were cut in real life as well, but he chalks it up to just being he nicked his fingers when the mirror fell in their room. Chase has to leave town for a couple days to work on a film, and suddenly the house starts shaking again, and Heather rushes downstairs to find Dylan watching the first Nightmare on Elm Street film, almost in some sort of trance. She turns the movie off, and it causes him to wake up out of it, and he starts screaming. The phone rings, and she picks it up, and it's of course a stalker.
Hello?
Hey man, there's no need to brag that you can count to 2. Some of us have trouble with that.
Hello?
Freddy's coming for you.
Look, I'm flattered really, but you don't have to tell me that. That's weird.
Another quake happens and Dylan's babysitter, Julie, shows up and she gets another call, this one just being the limo for her. She says goodbye to Dylan and she leaves to go to a talk show where she's surprised by Freddy's actor, Robert Englund, showing up in full costume. Afterwards, she's talking to Robert, and she gets a call from her producer's office at New Line Cinema, and she shows up and talks to her about making another Nightmare on Elm Street film. And they wanted to star as Nancy once more. Wes Craven, as previously mentioned, the creator of the franchise, also plays himself in the film, and the producer, Robert Shea, also plays himself in this one. Mentioning that Wes has been writing a new one for a couple weeks now, and her husband, Chase, has been working on the movie with a prosthetic animatronic claw. Heather returns home and finds Dylan in some sort of episode where he's freaking out with his babysitter trying to calm him down. He repeats in a spooky voice, "Never sleep again," and Heather asks him if she'd let him watch whatever movies, and she says no. She finds a stuffed animal Rex all clawed up and she tells him they're gonna fix him. She calls Chase and tells her about the episode Dylan had and asks her if the caller called again, and she tells him yes. He immediately leaves the set and tells her he'll be home soon, and the camera pans over to the animatronic hand and it's gone. This is becoming very FNAF. Is Chase the man behind the slaughter? Later that night, Heather is reading Dylan a bedtime story, Hansel and Gretel, and she decides it's too violent and he asks her how they find their way back home. And they talk about the breadcrumbs they used, and Dylan tells Heather that Rex, all fixed up now, is his guard and he keeps the scary man under his bed away, and Heather assures him that there is no man. On his way home, Chase is struggling to stay awake behind the wheel and tries to call home, but the call fails. Suddenly, the claw from the set comes up behind the seat and claws at his chest. Heather wakes up from the nightmare and Dylan tells her that Rex woke him up fighting the scary man. Suddenly, the doorbell rings and the police tell her that Chase fell asleep while driving and perished in a car accident. She demands to see his body and she heads to the morgue where the practitioner shows the body and the weird claw marks on his chest. She nearly pukes and she leaves. At the funeral, there's another earthquake, and Chase's casket falls and opens, and she dives over but trips over Rex and hits her head, and she turns around to see Dylan gone, and she looks back in the grave and sees Dylan being pulled into the casket by Freddy. She pulls him up and saves him, and then Chase's corpse reawakens and she suddenly wakes up being comforted by Sheriff Thompson's actor, John Saxon. Robert offers her any help that she may need, and Wes Craven looks around stunned at what happened. Later that night, Heather finds Dylan watching the first Nightmare film again, once again in some sort of trance, and he begins walking around and she wakes him up. He starts singing the Freddy song to her, and she asks where he heard that song, and he tells her under his bed. Honestly, this entire movie reminds me of that episode of Supernatural where Sam and Dean traveled to our reality where they're stars on a show called Supernatural and they play in Sam and Dean. I should keep watching Supernatural, let's peek. Anyways, Heather tells Dylan that Chase is in heaven now, and the next day Heather and John take Dylan to a playground where they talk about what's been happening. While they're talking, Dylan climbs to the very tippy top of the playground, and Heather and John see him hitting the Praise the Sun emote on top before nearly falling to his death, but Heather just barely catches him in time. Dylan is okay and tells Heather that he was just trying to reach heaven. Heather collects another page she got from her fucking Slenderman ass stalker, and later that night Heather is nearly seemingly killed by the animatronic claw and notices her bedsheet all clawed up after waking up to the sound of silverware falling on the ground. She walks downstairs and finds Dylan sleepwalking once again, singing the Freddy song and having made his own Freddy hand out of kitchen knives. He attacks her and she jolts out of her bed awake, and then finds Dylan downstairs for real this time, sleepwalking and singing the song holding Rex. In his sleep, he puts together the pages Heather received from the stalker spelling out "answer the phone." Suddenly the phone rings and a tongue comes out of the phone just like in the first one, and Dylan has another episode. She takes Dylan to the hospital and the doctor asks her if she's seen any of the films she's made, and Heather overhears the doctor say that she believes it may be early onset childhood schizophrenia. Dylan seems pretty avid and really not all that there, and he seems to miss Rex, and she tells him that she'll be at home just past the freeway. Heather heads to Wes Craven's house to talk to him about the new Nightmare film he's writing, and he tells her that it's about this entity that's ancient. It's lived as many different things in many different times, and there's only one way to capture it, and it's within a story. Storytellers would sometimes write something that just calls to the entity and trap it within the story, and whenever the story dies or ends, the entity is set free. In the script, the entity was held captive within the Nightmare on Elm Street series, and since they ended it and killed off Freddy, it's free. Now the entity is so used to being Freddy, it's crossed over from the movies into reality, and there's one person who could defeat Freddy once again, and it's Nancy. She asks him how they can defeat this entity now, and he asks her to play Nancy one last time. She looks over at the computer he's writing the script on, and notices that their entire conversation was written as dialogue. Heather researches childhood trauma, diseases, and sleep deprivation, and the TV suddenly turns on and the news anchor describes how 2 special effects artists were murdered, clawed to death, and a Freddy animatronic hand is missing. Another earthquake happens, and suddenly Freddy jumps out of the closet and attacks her. Dude, I'm sorry, he looks so bad in this one. I don't know what it is. His head just looks so, like, rubbery. He doesn't actually look burnt. It looks like a mask. Freddy thinks of her as Nancy, and he disappears after another earthquake happens. She rushes to the hospital to see Dylan and finds Julie there. She had a terrible dream about Dylan and came to see if he was alright. The doctor from earlier tells her that there's no nighttime visiting hours, and the doctor notices a slash on her arm and takes her to treat her. Heather tells her that it happened in the earthquake, and she tells her that there wasn't any earthquake that happened. The doctor tells her that Dylan is terrified of a man coming to get him, and Heather lets it slip that he's terrified of Freddy. The doctor begins to blame her for allowing Dylan to see her films, and later she's falling asleep in Dylan's room, and Dylan suddenly jumps up and tears open the oxygen tent and spits actual poop all over her. Dylan has another episode, and the doctor is about to cut him open, turns into Freddy, and Heather wakes up freaking out. The doctor tries to assure her that everything's okay and Dylan's safe with Julie. Heather rushes over to where Dylan is anyways, and they call security. They said he has acute sleep deprivation, and they think that Heather is preventing him from sleeping. She rushes over and sees Dylan, and Dylan asks to go home. The doctor says he should stay there until they figure out what's causing the episodes, and Heather tells him that she's gonna go get Rex for him. Here you can notice Heather's hair turning gray from the stress and fear, just like in the original film. Heather tells Julie not to let Dylan fall asleep until she gets back, and Heather gets taken by security to have a talk with the doctor. Julie tries to prevent the nurses from sedating Dylan.
Hey, you can't do that!
What a tame reaction to your coworker getting assaulted.
Give me your money! Give me all your money! Put it! Run out! Come on! Hey! You can't do that! Yeah, you're right. I'm gonna change.
G.I. Dan. Julie locks herself in the room, where Dylan trying to keep him awake until Heather gets back, and then the doctor tells Heather they should run some tests on her to see what's wrong, and maybe put Dylan in foster care for the time being. Dylan sees Freddy appear behind Julie, and he kills Julie by dragging her around the room just like the first ever kill in the Nightmare on Elm Street series. The nurses actually witness Julie being floated around and being killed by an invisible entity. Dylan cries out for Rex, and Heather sees Julie's body and finds that Dylan ran off somewhere. Heather rushes to find Dylan and calls John for help, and she sees Dylan climbing up a hill towards the freeway, realizing that he's trying to get away from Freddy and get home to where Rex is. He just casually walks across the freeway and starts getting trolled by Freddy a bit. While trying to cross the freeway to get to Dylan, Heather's hit by a car and Dylan continues running away from Freddy. She gets up and keeps chasing after him. She rushes inside their home and is scared by Sheriff Thompson. She tells him that Fred Krueger killed Jason, just like in the original. He tells her, yeah, sure. Thompson asks Nancy what's going on while Freddy wakens within Dylan's bed. He leaves in his quad car and she goes back inside the Elm Street house and finds Dylan missing. I gotta say, this is definitely the coolest part of the film. Everything like slowly turning back into the way it was in the original film is generally so cool. It's cool as shit and I love it. She sees the scene in the original on the TV of her trying to convince her father that Fred Krueger is still alive trying to get her. She follows the breadcrumbs of sleeping pills that Dylan left for her to follow. She takes every single sleeping pill that Dylan left for her so she falls asleep and is able to save Dylan. She slides down into dreamland and she finds a completed script on the ground. Dylan appears behind her and Freddy also shows up. She dukes it out with Freddy and he chases Dylan into a furnace where he can't get him because he's too fat, you fat ass, ha, fat bitch! Nancy tries to get up the stairs but gets her legs stuck in them just like in the original film. Right before Freddy kills Dylan, Nancy saves him and then Dilly saves Nancy for being, tongued to death by Freddy. Freddy falls into the furnace and they close the door and turn up the heat. Freddy explodes and dies and Nancy and Dylan make their escape. They fall out of Dylan's bed and Heather reads Dylan the movie script and the movie ends.
When I first watched this movie, I absolutely despised it, but upon rewatch, I guess I could say I like it.
I think this is a great concept for a film. I just don't think it really works as a Nightmare on Elm Street film, you know? Other than that, I think it's definitely a good movie. The music's great, it visually looks good, and I think Freddy looks like shit, but he really only shows himself a lot near the end, and I like that. I like that they actually got a good bit of the classic actors to come back and play themselves. I think I'm gonna go ahead and smack this baby right in B tier. Freddy vs. Jason. Oh yeah, peak movie time.
I've already talked about this movie in length in my last year's video where I ranked every Friday the 13th movie. And prior to watching it, I never actually had seen any Nightmare on Elm Street movies, so I was watching it more of a Friday the 13th movie. This time around, I actually watched it as a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, so I'll keep it brief since I've talked about it before.
While rewatching this one, I noticed that this is the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie to actually directly state that Freddy's a It was the exception of, I want to say, 5, where it just said it in a newspaper clipping. Other than that, it's only really implied at most. In the original film, Wes Craven actually wanted Freddy to be a but made the switch to him just being a murderer because he didn't want it to seem like he was exploiting the tons of child molestation cases in LA at the time. The film opens up with a narration from Freddy detailing how Springwood found a way to forget about him. He's not powerful enough to come back yet, so he wants to use Jason Voorhees, the Camp Crystal Lake killer, as a way to come back. He's gonna bring Jason back to life and have him kill teenagers in Springwood to make it seem like it was Freddy and bring back the fear of Freddy so he himself can come back. We see Jason murdering a girl in the forest by a lake when he's convinced by his mother to come back from the dead and go kill a bunch of children on Elm Street. Turns out it was just Freddy cosplaying as his mom and now waits in hell for Freddy to do his dirty work. On Elm Street in Freddy's old house, we meet a group of teenage girls, Lori, Kia, and Gib. Gib's boyfriend Trey shows up with another guy, Blake, that he brought for Lori. Lori misses her ex-boyfriend Will, who suddenly disappeared a couple years ago, and after Gib and Trey engage in activities upstairs, Trey gets some free chiropractic from Jason, and they all run outside in the rain screaming for help when... wow, I never realized this was supposed to be Fitzgibbon's backstory before he moved to Evergreen, I guess. The cops show up and they talk about how they think it was Freddy Krueger, and this is where I realized something after having watched all the movies. When I first watched this movie, I assumed that in the Nightmare on Elm Street film before it, the adults figured out a way to make Freddy forgotten, but they didn't. It still feels like there's a movie missing here. Like, how is Springwood suddenly a functioning town again after the 6th movie? How do all the adults and the cops know about Freddy? How are they able to set up this elaborate plan for no one to know about Freddy and keep him forgotten in hell? Anyways, at the police station, the chief threatens to send one of the cops to Western Hills, the asylum from the 3rd film, and Lori, after overhearing the cops say the name Freddy Krueger, falls asleep and finds a little girl with her eyes cut out who tells Lori about Freddy. She finds herself at Freddy's house and gets jump scared by him when we see Freddy hunt Blake for the party. Freddy's not yet powerful enough to kill him yet though, and allows Jason to kill him and his dad. By the way, Freddy looks way better in this one than he did in New Nightmare. Like, Jesus, what an upgrade. Too bad it's all for naught because of how he looks in the remake. We'll get to that soon though. We cut to Western Hills where we meet this guy Mark and Lori's ex-boyfriend Will. Mark asks the staff about this drug they're forced to take, Hypnosil, which was introduced in the 3rd film. Will sees on the TV that there was a murder at Lori's house, and so Mark and Will break out of the hospital to go see if Lori's okay. We see Lori's dad put some Hypnosil into Lori's drink, but she doesn't drink it, gets jump scared by Freddy again, and she decides to go to school. Lori's friends tells her that the cops are trying to say that Blake actually killed Trey and then killed himself and his dad. We meet this guy Linderman who's trying to console Lori, and we learn about this party that's being thrown. Lori tells Kia and Gib about Freddy in her dream while everyone in the hallway stops what they're doing just to watch her cry about it.
Like I said last time, go to class!
Lori tells them about the song, and Mark shows up and tells her more about Freddy, and Will shows up and tries to talk to Lori before she passes out from the shock and sleep deprivation. The principal shows up to see what's happening, and Mark and Will run off while Lori sleeps in the nurse's office. Kia gets scared by Freddy in her dreams, and Will and Mark have to run away from the cops. They head to the library and try to research Freddy, but everything's redacted and covered up. They realize that Freddy gets his power from fear and realize that he's coming back because people are becoming afraid of him again. They realize that they haven't remembered their dreams ever since being at Western Hills, and Will heads off to see Lori. At the party, Linderman tells off Kia.
You know what, Kia? I used to think you hated me because you thought I wasn't good enough for Lori. But that's not it. See, you tear me down to make yourself feel better because you really hate yourself, which is kind of pathetic when you actually stop and think about it, assuming, of course, you can think, with all that makeup weighing down your head.
That'll never get old.
And Lori and Will meet up again, and Will tells her that he was institutionalized while Gib walks off into the cornfield and gets tormented by her dead boyfriend and gets attacked by Freddy, of course. In reality, she's just asleep and about to be by some loser at the party, while in the dream she's about to be killed by Freddy. Jason then shows up at the party and kills her and the guy that was about to her. Be like Jason. Kill rapists. Freddy of course gets upset though that Jason stole his kill, and Jason starts slaughtering people at the rave.
Invite only corn poke and you weren't invited. Son of a bitch.
This movie honestly makes it hard to decide on whether who has more aura, Jason or Michael. Like, I genuinely can't decide. Anyways, the group runs away from the party. When Will takes Lori home, he tells her that he was committed to the hospital by her father because he witnessed her kill her mother. Lori's father suddenly shows up and Lori interrogates her father about everything. She runs away with Will again and they rush back to Mark's house where he's being tormented by Freddy using his dead brother. Lori and Will watch Mark be murdered by Freddy and he uses his body as a way to send a message that he's back. Officer Stubbs from the beginning thinks that it's a copycat of Jason Voorhees. The chief tells him that it's not Jason and it's someone whose name they don't speak about out loud. neighborhood, of course referring to Freddy. The group is talking about what to do when suddenly Officer Stubbs shows up to help them. Laurie realizes that Jason died by water and Freddy died by fire and thinks about what they could do with that. Everyone tries to tie up Laurie to use as a sacrifice, and her dad shows up and straight up sexually assaults her. He turns into Freddy and Laurie wakes up realizing that she pulled Freddy's ear off and into reality, and they realize that they could pull Freddy himself into reality from their dreams. They research Hypnosil and realize that it's a dream suppressant. They break into Western Hills where they search for the Hypnosil, and the stoner of the group, whose name I just cannot remember for the life of me, gets stoned and a security guard gets killed by Jason, who followed them to the hospital. And you know, I just have to ask, where the is everyone? Why is there no one here other than the one security guard? Why is this institution so fucking empty? Stoner dude gets pulled up on by a Freddy worm and gets possessed. And it's honestly weird that this is the movie where they remembered shit from the previous films. Like, why is this the movie where they remembered about Hypnosil and Weston Hills and Freddy's ability to possess people? They find Stoner dude pouring the Hypnosil down the drain as they're attacked by Freddy and Stubbs dies. Leatherman runs away screaming, and again, why is there no one around here to see or hear this? And Freddy possessing the Stoner dude's body gets some tranquilizer. The group runs away from Jason and Freddy tranks Jason while he gets Gojo to put him asleep so we can fight him on his turf. Freddy and Jason fight in Freddy's domain, and Freddy realizes that Jason's afraid of water. Again, like I said in my last video, none of the other Friday the 13th films shown Jason ever being afraid of water. Though I gotta say, here I love the movie's use of color. Like, they weren't afraid to let the colorful scenes actually be colorful. The group takes Jason in the van, keeping him sedated and asleep while they make their way over to Camp Crystal Lake, where Jason originally drowned. They realize they're running out of strength and time, so Laurie goes into Dreamland to pull Freddy out. Laurie witnesses Freddy drowning Jason, and in the real world, Jason starts drowning as well. Kia tries to give him mouth-to-mouth, but Jason jolts awake and the van crashes. Freddy gets mad at Laurie for preventing him from killing him, and she grabs onto him to pull him to reality, but they're unable to wake her up and Freddy torments her in her dream. She sees Freddy killing her mom and confirms that it was actually Freddy who killed her mother. Although it's weird that he went after her adult mother when Freddy hasn't really been known to kill adults unless he like had to, you know, or unless he wanted to like torment the kids even more. While trying to wake up Laurie, Jason bursts in and accidentally sets the cabin on fire. They fight him again with Linderman getting impaled on a metal hook on the wall, and Laurie gets woken up by the fire on her arm and pulls Freddy into reality. He turns around and sees Jason, and their fight ensues. Linderman bleeds out against a tree, and Kia distracts Freddy while Will and Laurie run away. Kia is then killed by Jason. Freddy somehow starts winning against Jason, which I guess makes sense because Jason doesn't really have any battle IQ, and Freddy's smarter and more creative, while Jason is more of a mindless killing machine. The fight takes him to a dock on the lake where Laurie and Will cover the dock in gasoline. Jason starts losing the fight as Laurie sets the dock on fire and the flame spreads to a propane tank and explodes, sending Jason and Freddy into the lake. They hug in victory as Freddy, somehow still alive, walks up trying to kill them, but Jason impales him with his own arm and falls into the lake. Freddy drops the machete and Laurie decapitates him with it. Laurie walks over to Jason to watch him sink into the lake. The movie ends with Jason re-emerging from the lake in hell and Freddy's disembodied head in tow. Freddy then gives us a wink and the movie ends. Upon rewatch, I think I like this movie just a teensy bit less than I did before, but that's really just because, as I mentioned previously, it still feels like there's a movie missing in between Freddy's Dead and this one. I could definitely tell this time around that this is definitely more of a Nightmare on Elm Street film than a Friday the 13th film, and I definitely like it more looking at it that way. Like, I like it more as a Nightmare on Elm Street film, but less as a movie itself, if that makes any sense. I realized this time around that Linderman didn't really serve any purpose in this, and I feel like they could have had the entire movie without him. I really liked it when Kia asks Freddy if he's the one that everyone's afraid of, and he does like a little bow. I just really like that. I don't know if there's anything else I really haven't talked about in my other video, but I think I'm gonna stick this one right in A tier. A Nightmare on Elm Street. I really don't feel like talking about this one.
Save me, please.
2009 and 2010. The years just for terrible remakes of classic beloved films, huh? In the order I've talked about these three movies: Halloween 2, 2009, Friday the 13th, 2009, and now Nightmare on Elm Street, 2010. They just get worse in that order. All completely and entirely butchering the best aspects of these classic films. I'm so tired of it. These directors just couldn't understand what made these classic films so great. They tried so hard to be edgy and dark and actually scary, but what they failed to realize is that no one wanted a darker and edgier and grosser Freddy, because look at him, he's disgusting. Sorry about the rant. Anyways, this piece of dog opens up with a man, Dean, in a diner walking through, and some scary stuff starts happening. Literally no building up, no foreplay, just right into it, huh? He gets slashed, and this terrible version of Nancy is the waitress at this diner, like how Alice was in 4 and 5. Dean looks down and realizes he got hurt in real life as well. Black Canary shows up and talks to him, and this man, Quentin, with his friend group, walks in, and it's clear that Quentin likes Nancy. The girl, Chris, broke up with this guy Jesse, and like, dude, Jesus Christ, I can't bring myself to care. Let's move on. Dean struggles with Freddy a bit, and he slices his own throat and dies. Chris sees a little girl at the funeral, and oh, that's a green screen. Why? The little girl with slashes across her torso was grabbed from the grave and the funeral disbands and Mr. Krabs! I didn't know SpongeBob and Nightmare on Elm Street took place in the same universe. Chris sees herself in a picture from when they were kids and notices it's the little girl from earlier. She says that she didn't know that her and Dean met in preschool because she thought that they didn't meet until high school. Nancy apparently has also seen some things in her dreams, and at home they recreate the classic, iconic ceiling scene from the first one, just less interesting. Or cool. Or scary. Or good. Chris goes up in her attic and finds a bunch of old things from when she was younger. She finds the slashed up dress that she saw herself wearing at the funeral, and Freddy jumps out. She wakes up, and the next day in class, Chris gets spooked by Freddy again, and Jesus Christ, he looks atrocious. He's ugly in like a bad way. Anyway, she wakes up screaming, and I don't even know why they recreated this scene with Chris instead of Nancy, even though in the original this was Nancy that this happened to. Later that night, Jesse shows up to see if she's okay, and again, why create classic scenes from the original with entirely different characters? They didn't even name these characters correctly. Why isn't this Tina? Why isn't this Rod? Why is Quentin named Quentin instead of Glenn? Why rename these characters if you're gonna just redo their stories anyways? Jesse has also seen Freddy in his dreams, and Jesse decides to stay with Chris for the night, and she wakes up in the middle of the night hearing her dog barking in the backyard, and of course goes down and finds her dog dead. Freddy tries to make a joke.
I was just patting him.
Why try to have a different, scarier Freddy if you're gonna have him still crack terrible jokes? In the original films, Freddy was funny at least with his jokes because they were bad like puns. This one is just like, you're trying too hard, man. Anyways, Chris sees the little girl's jump roping and what the f happened? That was so fast. Why have something so iconic in this if you're just gonna breeze past it? You. She wakes up and tries to go back to sleep only to get attacked by Freddy again. They recreate Tina's classic death scene, but again, worse in every conceivable way. It's like they were mandated to recreate it, but they just really didn't want to, so they just made it worse in short. And again, why is this character named Chris and not Tina? Why have Nancy still, but no other characters named the same? Jesse / Rod runs out, and Nancy's shown to be an artist. Jesse somehow breaks into her room covered in blood and tells her that someone killed Chris in her sleep. They get his name Freddy from the song that they hear the little girl sing in their dreams, and Jesse tells her not to fall asleep, and he gets caught by the cops. You can always tell when a director has no idea how police handle things when the cops don't read a suspect their Miranda rights in a movie. Like, sure, that happens in real life sometimes, but there was like 6 other cops around. Not one of them was like, hey man, you probably read him the shit you're legally required to read him. You. This movie sucks so much. Nancy then calls up Quentin / Glenn and tells him about Chris, and while Mark Wahlberg's weird brother over here has to deal with Jesse struggling to stay awake. Quentin learns up on sleep deprivation, gets spooked by a friend in the library, and oh my god, this looks like a fucking YouTube poop edit, bruh. I get this was 2010, but holy hell, dude. Jesse gets bailed out and is of course sleeping. They're really taking advantage of 2010 special effects, aren't they? Like, some things look good and they're actually pretty cool the way they do some scenes, but others just look so bad. I also don't know why they made the power plant here yellow instead of red in the original. Like, why make the title card and the logo still red themes, but have the main iconic red theme setting in the franchise yellow? Are they stupid? Freddy kills them, and for some reason they make it a thing that even though someone dies in their dream, Freddy can still torture them for a couple minutes afterwards because brain activity lasts for a few minutes after the heart stops beating. Like, yeah, I guess. But that's still really fucking dumb, because why would he still be in a dream state after that? Doesn't that take away the entire point of Freddy? He tortures and plays with his victims before brutally killing them. I'm so tired of these terrible, pointless late 2000s, early 2010s remake of classic beloved horror franchises completely butchering every aspect of them that made them so good in the first place! Halloween came back after the dark era into an even worse one. Friday the 13th was stuck in licensing hell, and they recently gained the rights back, and now they're developing a new TV series for that. And I think I read somewhere that they also just regained the rights back to Nightmare on Elm Street, also after being stuck in licensing hell, and developing a new TV series for that as well. I'm just desperately hoping they don't go the new Halloween trilogy route and just make it completely fucking awful. Anyways, back to the movie, I guess. Nancy asked her mom if she had any connection to Chris before high school or any guy named Freddy, and her normal, uninteresting, non-alcoholic mother tells her no. She calls up, I assume, her dad and tells him that Nancy's starting to remember. They try to recreate the classic bathtub scene, and of course fail because they forgot the point of the scene was Freddy drowning her in the tub. Did they forget that in the first one, Freddy tried to kill them in ways that made it look like accidents or suicide? Are they fucking dumb? Please, I'm begging you guys to give this series to anyone who actually gets the original films and these characters. Freddy is shown to definitely have some sort of connection to Nancy, and she wakes up in the tub to a call from Quentin. They find Nancy's old preschool shelf showing that they all had a connection to each other in preschool. Nancy's mom shows up, and Nancy confronts her about lying, and she admits that she just didn't want Nancy to remember what happened back then. Like, if you didn't want Nancy to remember anything, why did you keep this in the house where Nancy could easily find it? Why then keep it at all? So in preschool, Freddy Krueger lived in the basement of a school. First of all, what? He worked at the preschool as a gardener. What? What the f? is the point of calling this Nightmare on Elm Street if Elm Street has no significance? Why bring back the iconic house and street if the house or the street has no fucking relevance or significance to this one? Do they get people who fucking hated Nightmare on Elm Street to make a fucking Nightmare on Elm Street movie or something? Also, Nancy and the other kids were Freddy's original victims. And again, why? That takes out all of the significance for Elm Street and the house completely. These changes make no fucking sense and genuinely ruin the story entirely because Elm Street and the house are the most fucking important aspects of the original films. Quinn also doesn't live across the street either, so what's the point? In the original, it was great because she was literally across the street and unable to save Glenn from Freddy when she was so close. That's what made it so great and devastating. This movie, man. Anyways, Freddy shows Quentin a flashback of how he was killed at the abandoned power plant, and they for some reason made Freddy a little pussy bitch pleading for his life when they were chasing him down, instead of the weirdo, creep, disgusting bastard who made a deal with literal demons when he died. They also made it so the parents killed Freddy so that their kids wouldn't have to testify in court? Are you fucking kidding me? How fucking stupid can one movie be? Oh my god! In the original, they killed Freddy because he was acquitted on a technicality, not because they didn't want their fucking kids to testify in court. Why not? You could have had him locked away forever. It even seemed like there would have been a technicality to acquit him on. It also seems like they only made him a pedophile instead of a pedophile and a child murderer. That's just why? Suddenly, Chewie from Friday the 13th 2009? Is this supposed to be the same character? This came out 1 year later. We know that Jason and Freddy are supposed to be in the same universe. They rebooted these franchises 1 year apart. Am I insane for thinking they try to make these the same character? I think there's a theory here. A film theory, if you will. Anyways, Quentin confronts his father for killing Freddy and asking him how they know he was guilty. Suddenly, they're trying to make it seem like Freddy was innocent, even though he so obviously wasn't. Freddy himself literally admitted to Nancy that he did something to her when they were younger. Oh god, this movie is so unbearable. Then they recreate the classic body bag scene from the original, and of course it sucks as well. The only shot, the literal only shot in this movie that I can actually appreciate is right here, with the light behind Freddy in the store gradually turning into the power plant. Like, genuinely the only cool thing from this one. Nancy ends up in the hospital after being attacked by Freddy, and you know, I just have to ask, why did they make her mom not an alcoholic and not neglectful? Like, I know it seems like I'm just asking, wait, why does she have an actual good mom? And I am, like, genuinely, because the whole point of the parents being the way they were in the originals was to depict neglectful parents. Parents not believing there's something wrong with their kids and being unable to realize that their kids are going through something. Anyways, Nancy escapes the hospital somehow, and they end up back at the abandoned preschool where it all started, instead of Elm Street or the power plant. Save me! They find evidence that Freddy was indeed guilty, and like, what the was the point of the entire Freddy was innocent plot? Do they really need to extend this movie by 2 entire minutes so they added in this fucking useless revelation? Also, I gotta say, Freddy is so boring in this one, man. He's not intimidating, he's not cool or funny. Like, I don't even blame the actor for this. I think he did his best with what he was given. He does a great job of playing a genuinely disgusting bastard, but he's written so terribly. Anyways, Freddy slashes Quentin, and around this point, I realized that the entirety of the climax isn't gonna take place in the Elm Street house again. Again, what is the point of Elm Street in this one? They try to replicate some iconic lines from the original films, like Freddy saying, "How's this?" from A Wet Dream from the 4th one, and "My mouth says yes, yes," or whatever the he says in Freddy vs. Jason, but it's just so bad. Like, come on, man, why? Somehow, Quentin is still alive and tries to wake her up, and successfully does so by... Anyone with a functioning human brain should know you do not inject someone with an adrenaline pen into their chest. Fucking Hollywood bullshit. Nancy pulls Freddy out into reality and just, again, straight up steals a line from Freddy vs. Jason, and it just doesn't hit as hard as it does there. Maybe because Freddy vs. Jason is an actual good movie. They burn down the building, and the movie ends with Freddy killing Nancy's mother in front of her in just like a really fucking stupid way this time. Thank God this movie did bad enough for them to not make a sequel. Jesus Christ. Man, I thought Freddy's Dead was poop from a butt. Well, this one is straight shit from an ass. Nightmare on Elm Street? More like Nightmare to fucking sit through, because holy this sucks to watch. They made so many unnecessary changes in this one that just make no sense for them to change. Look, just because you're remaking something doesn't mean you have to change everything. Sure, make some changes, make it your own thing, but change does not always mean good. You shouldn't try to change crucial aspects from the original. And if what you're changing ain't broke, then don't fix it. Okay, let's break it down. They changed Freddy living on Elm Street, raping and murdering the children that lived on the street, right? He worked at the power plant, and when he was acquitted on a technicality, the parents of the murdered children banded together and killed him in the boiler room of the power plant he worked at. So he made a deal with some dream demons before he died, and came back as a demon himself to get revenge on anyone who lives in his old house, and kill the children of the parents who killed him. In this one, they made it so he lived in the basement of a preschool, raped not killed the children, worked as a gardener at the preschool he lived in, wasn't ever even caught, and just killed by the parents in a power plant he had no connection to. Let me just ask something. Why? I don't even think I like Nancy having any sort of connection to Freddy other than the fact that Nancy's mother helped kill him originally. I liked it better when he wanted to get revenge by killing the children who lived on Elm Street. But again, Elm Street has no fucking significance in this one because Freddy didn't even fucking live here! And the point of the original film at the end was Nancy taking back her energy in her life from Freddy after Freddy took everyone away from her. She took back the power over her dreams, yet Freddy came back anyways to haunt her. I just don't understand how you could write a movie that completely ruins and butchers every single little thing from the original film. There is absolutely nothing redeeming about this one. Literally nothing good about it. Another thing, they completely basically took out Nancy's father, who, you know, was one of the most important and crucial aspects to the first and third movies. This movie is so unbearably garbage, so unbearably dog-ass. I'm gonna stick this hot steaming pile of shit right on F tier. You know what? This movie actually made me appreciate the original even more, and I'm moving that up to A tier.
Now that I know how to defeat this dream demon haunting my dreams, I have no option but to try. Let's get the bastard.
Now I lay me down to sleep. Something, something, my soul to keep. If you don't, I don't care. I'll put down your underwear.
Where are you, Freddy? Come on, man, come out. Oh. Huh. Back here, huh? What? Oh! 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 I got this. Ah! Oh, shit! Oh, no. Oh my god! I can defend myself against you now, Freddy. You know what? I don't even need this. You know why? Because I'm over the age of 18. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this stupid video. This video took a very long time to make. It was very hard to make. For everything it was worth, I hope you enjoyed it. Now if I were to rank the slasher series that I've seen now, it would definitely be Halloween still at the top. That's still definitely my favorite. And now Nightmare on Elm Street and then Friday the 13th. Next year I'm gonna do Scream, so be sure to stick around for that. Next year I'll probably do some different style of video because I really don't think I like doing these videos where I just literally explain the plot of a movie like in depth. So maybe next year I'll do something different. Maybe I'll do a more Shea Frillis style video where I literally just talk about the movie itself, what's wrong with it, what's good about it, maybe stuff like that. I'll do another style, one of these videos where I talk about a movie in length. Maybe not as much as I did with this one where I'm like, oh, this happens and then this happens. I'll do something for Christmas this year, but not to like this. Again, thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it this far, like, actually thank you so much. Have a very happy Halloween, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.